Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 20 favorite power metal bands of all time. Of course, this is just a list of my personal preferences, so with that in mind, I want to get things started here with number 20 with, in my opinion, one of the most underrated power metal bands out there. That's Highland Glory. Founded by former members of Phoenix Rising, the band would change their name and lead vocalist here to form Highland Glory with their debut record, From Cradle to the Brave. A fantastic listen, in my opinion, from start to finish, just showing the more melodic side of the band here and the more melodic side of power metal that they really excelled in, right? There's only 3 albums in the Highland Glory catalog, and, they're a band that I think, in hindsight, looking back, probably had a lot of untapped potential, considering only 3 albums there, but I really do enjoy those 3 records quite a bit, so I wanted to include them in the top 20 here. I consider them to be very underrated in the grand scheme of things. So with that in mind, getting us started here at number 20, I'm going to go with Highland Glory. Next at number 19, let's go with Savatage Circus, German and Swedish power metal act founded by Tom and the Omen Stouch before departing Blind Guardian, a great drummer, but it was initially a side project before he would eventually leave the band to become a full-time thing. And they're another band with only a couple of albums, and a future album is pretty unclear right now. I would say probably not likely in the foreseeable future, but they're a group that sound very much like a mix between, Blind Guardian and Persuader. So some have questioned the band's originality in their sound, from a sonic perspective, but, I really love the parallels between this group here and old school Blind Guardian, especially on their debut record, Dreamland Manor. So I think they're great. I really enjoy those parallels, and, anything Blind Guardian, especially early Blind Guardian, is fantastic. So if they're going to draw influence from that, that's an A+ for me. I do really enjoy Savatage Circus and consider them to be a bit underrated, especially compared to Blind Guardian, which is where Tom and the Omen Stouch came from. So great band, in my opinion, definitely underrated. My number 19 on the list here. Gonna go with Savatage Circus. Following that up now with my number 18, let's go with Savatage, but in particular, the early years of the band are what qualifies them for this list. I'd say everything from Sirens through this album right here, Gutter Ballet, are pretty power metal, and they were no doubt influential to many bands on this list as well. Some of the more symphonic elements of their sound also paved the way for the TSO, which would come years later, right? And the only reason I don't have them ranked higher on this particular list is because I don't consider a lot of their work in the 90s after Gutter Ballet. This came out in 89, so whatever they did in the 90s to be pretty power metal, right? A lot of their stuff during that time period, especially fronted by Zach Stevens, is very strong, but I wouldn't necessarily consider it to be, power metal Savatage. So with that in mind, if not for, that period of the band being a bit different, more traditional heavy metal, I definitely would have them ranked a bit higher here on this countdown, but nonetheless, the early work of Savatage lands them a spot here on this countdown at number 18, going with Savatage, particularly from Sirens to Gutter Ballet. Next at number 17, we have Persuader, a band I mentioned a little bit earlier. They're an act that are definitely reminiscent of early Blind Guardian, as well as bands like Iron Savior and Nocturnal Rites, and they've also taken influence over the years from some prominent thrash metal acts, and since their formation have released 5 studio albums, with their most recent being released in 2020. In 2022, they announced they were going on indefinite hiatus, but they're a band that, I think some people could criticize them for not necessarily being very original in their sound, right? Very early Blind Guardian-esque, but like I said before, those early years of Blind Guardian are top-notch in my opinion, so in power metal, if you're going to draw influence from that, that's definitely the right band to be influenced by. So with that in mind, I enjoy the parallels in sound there, and they're going to be my number 17 on the list. For my number 16 now, I'm going to go with Angra. I love their mix of power metal with prog and neoclassical elements as well on their 9 studio albums. They're definitely an act that I would consider to be somewhat underrated, especially in the sense that their biggest following is in Japan and Europe, so not one of the most popular power metal acts over here in North America, but I think their catalog definitely does speak for itself, with great records to their name like Angel's Cry, Holy Land, Fireworks, Rebirth, and The Amazing Temple of Shadows. All awesome records in their catalog that I gravitate towards quite a bit, so with that in mind, they're my number 16 here on the list. Gonna go with Angra. At number 15, we have Gloryhammer, one of those unique bands on this list, in my opinion. Gloryhammer are a fantastic example of originality in power metal, from awesome conceptual pieces to fantastic stage shows as well. The band, founded by Ailstorm vocalist Christopher Bowes, do not miss in the studio, in my opinion, right, including with their most recent album, Return to the Kingdom of Fife, one of my favorite power metal albums of the year thus far. speaking of uniqueness in power metal, my pick for number 14, Avantasia, are a fantastic supergroup project created by Tobias Sammet of Edguy, and they've been characterized as more of a rock opera featuring collaborations with various musicians over the years, which has been really cool, right? You name it, they've probably collaborated with Avantasia. Some awesome concept albums as well. The musicianship is fantastic. It's incredible stuff, and like I said, the collaborations are always awesome, and I really enjoyed the most recent album as well, A Paranormal Evening with the Moonflower Society from 2022. Killer album, very proggy stuff, right? Some great guest appearances and collaboration, things of that nature. They're a supergroup that do not miss, in my opinion, and a very unique, different band, out of the ordinary, but I really enjoy that about them, so they're my number 14 here on the list. Going to go with Avantasia. Number 13, we have Nightwish. You know, when Nightwish formed in the late 90s, there was no band quite like them, and they provided such a shot in the arm for symphonic metal at the time, with vocalist at the time was Tarja Turunen, who was just fantastic, right? Her operatic vocals mixed with the band's symphonic metal sound combined with power metal elements. It was just so different for the time and very unique. And since Tarja's departure, she's been replaced by Floor Jansen, who's done a killer job as well on lead vocals since permanently joining the band in 2013. So regardless of which vocalist you prefer in the band, I think they've both done great work, and the band have released some fantastic studio records from their debut in 1998 all the way up until the present day. So with that in mind, I wanted to put them somewhere close to the top 10, so I think 13 is fair. Going to go with Nightwish. Number 12, Hammerfall. They're a band that I think have become a bit underappreciated lately, considering the fact that a lot of their best work is probably behind them at this stage in their careers now. You know, they're probably not going to make any more records on the level of No Sacrifice, No Victory, as well as Crimson Thunder, but you know, I think there's definitely been a bit of a decline in quality since the release of Crimson Thunder in their studio output, but they're still making strong albums here, and I think they definitely belong on this list, especially with their most recent record from 2022, Hammer of Dawn, being their most, classic-sounding record in years. Is their best in quite a long time, so I still think that they have a lot more to offer in the studio, even if it's not necessarily the best work of their career. Hammer of Dawn was very strong, but, when it comes down to it, their classic material is just incredible, so all things considered, they definitely belong here in this countdown. Coming in at number 12, I'm going with Hammerfall. Number 11 here on the list, Powerwolf have become one of the heavy hitters in power metal these days, despite some considering them to be a bit overrated. I definitely disagree with those critics. I think that they're one of the best in the genre these days, influenced by the likes of Black Sabbath, Merciful Fate, and Iron Maiden. Their style is a bit different from other power metal bands in a sense that they don't just use classic metal instruments, but organs and a church choir in the studio as well, and live, the band's live set is just fantastic and a spectacle in and of itself, with great use of pyrotechnics and audience engagement too, so definitely a fun band to listen to, and one that I definitely like to see live at some point. Their most recent album, Interludium, was one of my favorite records of 2023 thus far, definitely one of the best power metal releases of 2023, so I'm planning on doing a countdown at the end of the year of my favorite power metal albums of this year, so expect that to be pretty high up on the list here, but that said, my number 11 here on the list, going to go with the legendary Powerwolf. Some might find them overrated, but I definitely don't agree with that notion. I think that they're appropriately rated and, deserve the attention and recognition that they get. We break into the top 10 now with Manowar. Now, Manowar, throughout, the 2 years I've been doing this channel, whenever I count down top 10 bands, musicians, albums, they're one of the most requested bands for any of those lists. A lot of people say, where's Manowar? And the truth is, I really do like Manowar, Not one of my favorite bands of all time, but when it comes to some of the best in power metal, I wanted to put them in the top 10 here. Manowar are a band with excellent musicianship that can easily walk that line between, incredible and very self-indulgent as well, but I think that's part of it, right? Nonetheless, they're a very fun band to listen to, and of course, Manowar have released some great studio albums throughout the 80s that are, essentials. Albums right here, like Fighting the World, you have Kings of Metal as well. Great records, right? Again, maybe a little bit self-indulgent at times, but still very fun to listen to. A very entertaining band with a lot of personality and charisma, right? Other bands play, Manowar kill, and with albums like I just mentioned, that definitely does prove that cheesy lyric is true. Great band in my opinion. A band that I should be talking about a little bit more often than I do on the channel, but definitely wanted to include them here in the top 10 today. Coming in at number 10, gonna go with Manowar. Next at number 9, we have Sonata Arctica. Oddly enough, they were initially formed under the name Tricky Beans, and predominantly a hard rock band before shifting their sound and changing their name to a more power metal approach in the late 90s. they've cited influences like Queen and Stratovarius, who have, definitely influenced their career, and they consider themselves to be more melodic metal than anything else. Still a great band. I really do enjoy the catalog of Sonata Arctica, and find that their transition from hard rock to power metal was a much needed one, and the work that they did in the early 2000s was very much making a statement that they were a different band and that they could thrive in a power metal environment, and definitely did hold their own. So even though they were a band that started off doing more of a hard rock kind of a thing, they grew into being a tremendous power metal band. In my top 10 here, going to go with Sonata Arctica at number 9. Number 8, going to go with Gamma Ray, formed by Kai Hansen after his departure from Helloween in 1989. My introduction to the band came through the Land of the Free record, and I was immediately hooked, on the group. And around the time of their debut album, Kai Hansen definitely did evolve his vocal style to become more melodic and clear, while still keeping elements of that nasal tone, reminiscent of his early years with Helloween, right? A little bit of that raspy sound. And of course, Kai Hansen is considered to be the godfather of power metal and responsible for two of the biggest power metal bands of all time in Helloween and Gamma Ray. So, when listening to Gamma Ray, you can definitely, feel some of the similarities between the two groups, considering the fact that, his influence has been exponential on both Helloween and Gamma Ray. But with that said, coming in at number 8 here, I'm going to go with Kai Hansen's creation, Gamma Ray, coming in at number 8 here on the list. Number 7, Iced Earth. Now, the future of Iced Earth might be a little bit unclear right now, but Prime Iced Earth were a force to be reckoned with for sure. Personally, I prefer the Ripper Owens era of the band. I think that that's some of the best work he did in his entire career, but I also love the Matt Barlow era of the group as well. So regardless of, which singer or era of the band you're a fan of, there's no doubt they were fantastic during the golden years of their career. And again, not sure what the future holds for Iced Earth. A lot of controversy right now. However, when it comes to the prime of their career, they did some killer stuff with Ripper and with Matt Barlow as well. But for me personally, maybe it's unpopular to favor the Ripper Owens era, but I was introduced to the band through the Glorious Burden, which was Ripper Owens' first album with the group, and I was just hooked with that entire record. So I eventually then got into the Barlow era stuff, but just always remained a bit more partial to the Ripper Owens era. So again, maybe just an unpopular opinion for me. I'm a little bit biased to the Ripper stuff, but it's all fantastic in my opinion, and Prime Iced Earth were absolutely killer. Number 6, we have Sabaton. I never understood the hate for Sabaton. I mean, why do people dislike them? So many people, write them off as overrated just because of how popular they are, and I've never understood that. I mean, when it comes down to it, they could be the most popular band in the world, or no one could have ever heard of them. But if it's good music, it's good music, and it's going to make my list. So with that in mind, I always enjoyed Sabaton. I think that they've, released Album of the Year contender in every single release they've made since the release of The Art of War. So with that in mind, there are so many great albums to their name. Careless Rex from 2012, incredible record. The Great War was incredible, right? You have Heroes, The War to End All Wars. Awesome albums. I find their lyricism to be fantastic, right? Very intelligent, thinking person's band, and when it comes down to it, they're a band that get written off as overrated just because they're popular, and I don't understand that at all. I've always found them to be a fantastic band, definitely a powerhouse in the world of power metal, no pun intended. I think that they're a group that are going to keep making great albums in the foreseeable future as well, that are going to be more Album of the Year contenders. So when it comes down to it, they're definitely at the top of their craft in modern day power metal, and all the hate that they get, I've just never understood. Coming in at number 6 here, let's go with Sabaton. Sometimes described as Nintendo metal, or even Slayer meets Journey. Coming in at number 5, getting us started in the top 5, I'm going to go with Dragonforce. They're a band where I just love their style, including fast-paced, lengthy guitar solos, fantastical lyricism, and retro video game influenced sound as well. Alongside Helloween, Blind Guardian, and Sabaton, Dragonforce are part of the Big Four, power metal, and definitely belong in that elite company, in my opinion, combining elements of speed and prog metal as well in a really interesting manner. So there's a lot of different aspects to the band to appreciate, but for me personally, I think their sonic originality is unrivaled by anybody in the power metal subgenre. So for that reason, they're in the top 5 here. They get us started here. Coming in at number 5, I'm going with Dragonforce. At number 4, I'm going to go with Rhapsody, or Rhapsody of Fire. And although I feel like their studio output has dropped in quality since the release of golden period albums like Legendary Tales, Dawn of Victory, and The Power of the Dragon Flame, they definitely belong in the top 5 just for helping to pioneer symphonic power metal alone. And on top of that, in my opinion, Fabio Leon is one of the all-time best vocalists in all of the power metal genre. So with that in mind, they're a great band, and even though their studio output is not as strong as it used to be, they're a fantastic band who pioneered a lot of the things that we take for granted in power metal now. So they're going to be my number 4 here on the list. Going to go with Rhapsody of Fire. Finnish power metal legends turning 40 next year. Stratovarius get us started in the top 3. despite having many lineup changes over the years and being a band who have no current founding members left in the group, they've still been able to uphold a level of musicianship and power metal that I think still delivers to this day, even as recently as their most recent album, 2022's Survive. Great record in my opinion, so they're definitely a unique case in the sense that having no original founding members left, they can still put out quality music, and I think their entire catalog, lineup changes and all, really does speak to that, so that's why I think they belong in the top 3. Getting a start in the top 3 here, gotta go with Stratovarius. Another key member of the German heavy metal scene from the mid-80s, another great power metal band, turning 40 next year, Blind Guardian, going to be my number 2 here on the list. One of the most important and influential bands in all of power metal and speed metal history as well. You know, very unique and distinct for the use of folk tunes and instruments, specifically on power ballads like, for example, Lord of the Rings and A Past and Future Secret, just to name a few awesome examples in my opinion. So, you know, to be honest, it did take me a while to get into Blind Guardian, but I grew to appreciate them and their influence as well as their uniqueness as time went on, and I do really love their most recent album as well, The God Machine from 2022. Great stuff. And finally, coming in at number 1 here on the list, maybe predictable, but I gotta go with Helloween, the standard bearers for power metal for decades, right? They're responsible for some of those iconic releases in the genre, like Keeper of the Seven Keys, Walls of Jericho as well, and vocalist Michael Kiske, when he joined the band for Keeper Part 1, definitely did take the band to the next level, one of the best voices in all of metal, and me personally, like I've said on the channel before, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, not a big fan of the Andy Darius era stuff. I think when Kiske left, a part of the band left with him, but I'm so glad that he's reunited with the group now, and they're stronger than ever, right? Their most recent album here, this great reunion album, self-titled, is an awesome testament to that, so awesome that the band are making new music together again that, you know, rivals some of their older stuff, in my opinion. This is a tremendous record, very old-school Helloween as well, so when it comes down to it, they're fantastic, absolute legends of power metal, and deserve the number 1 spot, in my opinion, so coming in at number 1 here today, finishing off the list, have to go with Power Metal Legends Helloween. So that wraps up this video here, counting down my top 20 favorite power metal bands of all time. It should be visible right over here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below. We are only 11 subscribers away from getting to 1.6 thousand subs here on the channel. The growth of the channel over the past week and a half has been amazing, so thank you all so much, and if you're a new subscriber, welcome to the channel. And of course, you know, be sure to turn on the bell for notifications so you never miss a new upload, and let me know down in the comment section below what are some of your favorite power metal bands of all time. I definitely want to hear your opinions, and until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.